Hey, welcome back to Look of the Week videos. We're still continuing in the theory and application for banjo, and the previous video we looked at the scale formula to determine, the steps, whole steps and half steps between a normal scale, and we looked at G major for our example. So what I'd like to do in this video is just continue with where we stopped last time and still stay inside the example of the G major scale. And we looked at playing a G major scale a couple of different ways, but what I'd like to do now is to maybe just take a block of the fingerboard frets 1 to 5, and let's see if we can isolate as many different ways to play the G major scale as we can, because the primary function of the major scale is to play melodies. Your building block tones for melodies in a key, like if you say I play Cripple Creek, for example, in the key of G, that means you're primarily going to use G scale notes for the notes to play the melody. And chords are also constructed of scales, so it's probably the most valuable thing you'll learn on a fundamental level, speaking of theory in your banjo playing. So let's look at the G scale instead of just a couple examples. Let's see if we can find as many different ways to play the G scale in frets 1 to 5, and then we'll compare that to the notes of, say, Cripple Creek and see what's going on with that. So let me zoom in so you can get a better shot of the fingerboard. Okay, now the first example, I stayed on the 3rd string, which wound me up here at the 12th fret, but what I want to do is stay pretty close to frets 1 to 5. I don't want to go past the 5th fret for this example. And we're trying to find as many different pathways or routes for the scale notes. And you can't play a scale like this incorrectly as long as you stay in the confines of the same octave. So I'm going to find my G note here on the 4th string at 5, and then my A here, which is a whole step, my B here, my C here at 5 on the 3rd, and switch to the 2nd string at 3, that's my D. Here's my E, 2nd string 5, F sharp at the 4th fret of the 1st string, and then G could be here. G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G. So there's one G scale version, or one pathway. Let's try another pathway. G, A, but instead of going here for B, let's go to the open 2nd for B. C, stay on that string for D, E, F sharp, and then G. Slightly different route, but the same notes. And you can use whatever fingers for your left hand you're comfortable with. Alright, that's another good pathway. What about this? G, A, B, C, open D, E, F sharp, and then open 5 is G. What about the open 3rd string? G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, and G. So you can see from all these different pathways we found, there's obviously more than one way to play a G scale and stay within that one set of notes, that one octave. And again, if you go outside that octave, you have to start another set of scale notes over if you play a normal major scale like we're talking about. So that gives you a lot of different choices for notes. Now, immediately, to make scales useful for the things we're talking about, musically speaking, we need to apply it to melodies to find out which one of the scale notes relate to the melody. So the example of Cripple Creek, has a lot of notes, but most of those notes are filler notes, like roll notes, pull-offs, hammer slides. They're not really the melody, just a way to enhance the melody and fill the spaces around it. Let's look at the tune Cripple Creek and compare it to the notes of the G major scale, because I'm playing it in the key of G, which means I'm primarily using G scale notes. But which one of the scale notes am I using how many times am I using each scale note? That's what we need to figure out so we can study how this is going to help us use scales to play melody. So what I'm going to do is isolate just the notes that are melody. And Cripple Creek is actually a vocal song. It has lyrics. Vocal songs are great ways to hone in on what the melody is, because instrumentals sometimes have a lot of notes, and it may be that every note you play is a part of your break in an instrumental. But in a vocal song, you can use the vocal line, we call it, or what the singer actually sings, and that's usually the melody. So I'm going to sing Cripple Creek and try to eliminate, the slides and things. Going up Cripple Creek, going in a run, going up a Cripple Creek to have a little fun. And then the next part of the verse is the same thing again. Going up a Cripple Creek, going in a run, going up a Cripple Creek to have a little fun. Now obviously I'm not inflecting everything that I might sing, but I'm singing just a really plain Jane version. Now let's identify those notes. We've already used the G scale in a bunch of different roots to find out how they lay on the fingerboard. Now let's compare and see if any of these notes lined up with the scale. G, G, okay, well that's one of the locations for the G scale. That was the high G, the second octave G. Going up, then we use the open D, the open B. D and B, they're both part of the G scale. And then we play C, E as melody. They're both scale notes for G. And then D, which is a scale note. B, B, which are scale notes. A, G, scale notes. D, E, G, scale notes. There's not one note of Cripple Creek, if you sing it traditionally, the way most people do, there's not one note there that does not belong in the G scale. Now obviously we didn't use every note in the G scale, and we used the same note a few times, like B, B, G, G, D, B, C, E, D, B, B, G, A, B, E, G. So we reused G a few more times, we reused B. So even though we repeated a bunch of notes, we still never went beyond just the normal G scale. And an interesting thing happened there is we didn't actually use one of the notes of the G scale at all. We never used the F sharp note, which is the 7th note of the scale. And we only used the C note one time in the melody. So if I were to give each note of the G scale a number, like G is the first note, B is the second, C is third, G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G, right? I would find out that the notes that I used primarily to play Cripple Creek were all the notes of the scale except for C, which I only used once, and I never used an F sharp note. Now that's interesting to take note of. That's not by chance. That happens to relate to something that's pretty important for traditional music, especially vocal song, and that is pentatonic scales. A pentatonic scale is basically what it sounds like, pent meaning 5. If you take 5 notes out of a normal scale and isolate just those 5 notes, we call that a pentatonic version of a scale. And it just so happens that the melody for Cripple Creek and tons of other melodies also have their basis in pentatonic versions of scales. So now we've got the basic G scale going. We found a bunch of different ways to play it right here in the first 5 frets. And then we compared it to a song like Cripple Creek, and we found out that we reused a lot of the scale notes except for the C and the F sharp. And we only used the F sharp, we only used the C once, and we never used the F sharp. So if we give each one of the notes a number, then we'll see that 5 out of the 7 notes got used the most. And that's going to lead us up to our next video, which is talking more in depth about pentatonic versions of scales. So be on the lookout for video number 6 with pentatonics, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.